Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guildies. How are you? I am here today to do a little roundup of the 10.1 announcement. Oh my god, we have so many things to talk about. So let's dive straight into it. 10.1 has been announced. We don't have a date for it yet. We do have a date for 10.0.7, which brings a whole bunch of things with it. But 10.1, not a date yet. As part of the roadmap, we're probably looking around June. Although Diablo 4 comes out around then, another pretty famous Blizzard title that most of us will want to play. So I imagine, and in an interview with Dratnus, Morgan Dace kind of suggested that they're going to try and not overlap those two launches. So it's either mid-June or late June for the release. But let's dive right in. 10.1 brings with it the sort of regular things you would expect. So we have a new zone called Zaralek Cavern, which is actually immediately underneath the Dragon Isles. They've developed a whole new tech so that there's actually no loading screens between the zones. You'll come through like a big tunnel and you'll basically just fly straight into the new zone without there being sort of any loading screens in between. I think they called it air gap technology or airlock technology. Which is pretty cool. There's a couple of different entrance points across the Dragon Isles, and they actually mentioned in this that there'll be all the things that we're sort of used to from the Dragon Isles, like the rock climbing quests and the Tuskar quests and what have you, will also be in Zaralek Cavern, as well as getting an update in the Dragon Isles. So you'll actually have a reason to still be in both areas, which is kind of a first, because I remember in Shadowlands, when Korthia came out, there was no reason to be anywhere other than Korthia. You set your Hearthstone there, happy days. Other than, moving on to Keys in the open world, that's where you were. And same with Zereth Mortis. When that came out, you just set your Hearthstone to Haven, and that's where you lived. But this seems like Valdrakken will still be primarily the place, and will be flying in. There's a lot of cool photos. It's a largely underground area. And one of the major entrances is actually going to be underneath the Obsidian Citadel. And so you'll fly sort of under the Obsidian Citadel, and that is where we are going to get access to our new raid. They call it a new raid dungeon, but the new raid called Aberrus the Shadowed Crucible, which has already been dubbed as Arabusi by the community, which I fucking love. It looks pretty cool. It's very, very visually similar to a lot of these sort of, like, if you think Blackwing Descent, combined with a bit of Altar the Incarnates, it's still got that Dragonflight aesthetic. And Aberrus is going to be where Neltharion, or Deathwing, did a lot of his genetic experiments that eventually led to the Drakthir, but also created the dragon boss that we fought in Kata just before Deathwing, X13B, as well as a couple of his other cool little creations. I like this. This seems to be where Deathwing was making his armor. They've also said that Heroic, Normal, and Mythic are all going to release at the same time, which is what we had for Season 1 of Dragonflight. There's been a bit of commentary about this so far. Personally, from my perspective, I think the change is good. The reason I like the change is because that first week of Mythics has always felt like, oh, well, what do? I do a couple of sixes and then I'm done. Now, with the simultaneous release, Mythic Plus, which is primarily what I do in the game, is available from the first week. There's nothing worse than going into Heroic, doing a bit of Heroic, and then getting out of it and being like, okay, cool, well, I guess I'll just log on next week. I can see how it would be super frustrating from the hardcore Mythic community, because now they obviously lose an extra week of splits. And it means that when the Mythic raid launches, they're sort of stuck just doing Heroic splits. And I know, generally people are very excited. They want to get into Mythic. They want to do the hardest difficulty. They want to play the game. But for someone like myself who has to progress through Heroic, before I even get to Mythic, it's a pretty, and I think that's a pretty common, way people play the game. And I think for those people, this is a pretty positive change. We do have tier sets coming back, which is nice, and they've gone back to a sort of one per class look, which is nice. I like it. Some of these sets look pretty cool. Some of these look like someone T-posing. I'm sorry, Demon Hunters. And it's a similar. Wow, that warrior set looks unreal. Similar one color per difficulty level. Mage looks pretty cool. Rogue looks pretty sweet. Most of these look pretty cool. This priest one is unbelievable. And this Death Knight one looks so sick. I love these. I love these sort of dragon shoulders. These look unreal. The helmet is pretty similar to what we've seen in the past. It does look very Death Knighty, but these dragon shoulders are just unreal. And that priest set. This priest set looks more paladin-y than the paladin set. I love it. They've added another dragon riding mount in, which they have said will gain a lot of the colors that you've already unlocked across your other dragon riding mounts, and there's a lot of customizations in it. Cool thing. It's nice. I really want more diversity in the dragon riding mounts. I know for me, I sit in Valdrakken and kind of everyone is on the same mount, but that happens as well because Razageth drops a dragon riding skin, and pretty much everyone just wants to run the cool Razageth dragon riding skin. That will probably remain pretty similar, but these look pretty cool. I like his helmet. His helmet looks cool. They've sort of said they're bringing helmets in, or it's been data mined. Next up, we have the new Season 2 Mythic Dungeon rotation, which, this is chef's kiss of dungeons. So we have the 4 Dragonflight dungeons that we didn't get in Season 1. So we have Brackenhide, Halls of Infusion, the new revamped Alderman, and Neltharion. I'll touch on it a bit more later, but don't worry, they have already said that they are aware of the issues with Brackenhide and with Halls of Infusion, and we're not going to, hopefully, fingers crossed, end up with another sort of Ruby Life Pools Week 1 situation where that dungeon was, for lack of a better word, utterly fucked. There's a lot of dispels in Brackenhide. There's a lot of kicks in Brackenhide. It's, if you remember it from week 1, it was a pretty rough dungeon, but they have said already that they're going to do some nerfs. But the 4 returning or legacy dungeons to the Mythic Plus pool are super exciting. We have Freehold and we have the Underrot from BFA. Fantastic dungeons. Freehold is awesome. There's a lot of diversity in the way you can pull that dungeon. It's a really fun, really cool dungeon. It's generally considered most people's favorites from BFA. The Underrot, I loved the Underrot. It was nice. There was a bit of sort of linear with some options, and then sort of a free-form room, and then the final boss room. The scary thing is the value of disease dispel in that dungeon is significant. My hope is that they change up the dispels or make the value of disease dispel a little less in there, just so that you don't feel forced into bringing a disease dispel just for the Underrot, because it will become a healer mechanic, and then it's limiting the number of healers that can actually push that dungeon as far as it goes. I'm not a big fan of making one class or one spec required for a dungeon, but I'm excited to see the Underrot back. And that wasn't the case in BFA either, but hopefully it's something that they've got kept in mind. They're also bringing back Neltharion's Lair. Neltharion is Nefarion's kid, which is he sort of inherited that, hey, let's do weird, creepy mutagens on other dragons from his dad. So it kind of fits in thematically. And the interesting one is they have brought back a Vortex Pinnacle from Cataclysm. Now, they had originally said that Mop was as far back as they were willing to go in the dungeon pool. So it's interesting to see Vortex Pinnacle come back from Cata. But I like it. I like it as a change. Vortex Pinnacle is one that most people probably aren't familiar with. Cata was a very, very long time ago. And it's nice to see them dipping into that pool. I would love for them to, if this works and if people, react positively to Vortex Pinnacle, I would love for them to go even further back. It'd be cool to see like an original Dead Mines, or some of like the vanilla dungeons brought back, even some of the Waddle K dungeons, especially with Classic being out. I love this. I love the whole bringing in 4 legacy dungeons. I think is a great move. Moving still in the vein of Mythic Plus, but moving into affixes, there was some interesting commentary on a few reviews a few interviews done on the Mythic Plus scene. And the main one is that there's going to be no seasonal affix next tier, none at all. So this tier is Thundering, last tier was Encrypted. We're actually getting rid of that altogether. And they mentioned, Morgan Day and Steve Denuso mentioned in an interview that the reason why they're deprecating it is because we have new dungeons each season. You don't need the seasonal affix to keep things feeling fresh and new and what have you. They have also said, is it in here? Potentially? Yes, the level 7 bucket is getting an affix refresh. So the current level 7 bucket is, as you can see here, Quaking, Grievous, Volcanic, Storming, and Explosive. And they're looking to fundamentally rework how those affixes work. Because I know, and I'm sure you guys know as well, that particularly Grievous and Explosive have become healer mechanics, and they really should be a group mechanic, but I don't know how many groups you've been into where they go, oh, I don't have to even look at Explosive, that is a healer thing, the healer damages them all. And Grievous, obviously, entirely a healer thing, where you're trying to keep the team topped up while they're taking constant ticking damage. Quaking interrupts casting, Volcanic interrupts casting, and Storming for everyone but a Death Knight is a pain in the butthole. So I'm glad that they're giving it a look. What I would really like to see, and would have seen a few people comment on, is potentially bringing some of the seasonal affixes in for a rotation pool at maybe that level 7 range, because there's a lot of commentary about affixes at the moment, but I don't think we need affixes to be punishing. The goal of affixes, I think, should be to keep dungeons fresh each week, and with having something that's fun and engaging and makes the dungeons harder and easier at the same time, I think there's a lot of room for that within Mythic Plus. Additionally, what do we got here? I already touched on this, simultaneous release of the raid, and now we have an actual review of the raid. Look at this guy, he looks unreal. There's a lot of sort of black dragony themes happening within the dungeon. We saw these photos a little earlier, some cool concept art. There's quite a bit going on, but nothing too crazy there. I am a little excited. There's a couple other things coming. They talked about a new renown track that we can get called the Niffen. Look at his little hat, little cowboy mole rat man. I really like him. He's real cute. He's got his little ogre friend with him. Quite cool. They're going to have a whole bunch of extra world content to engage with if you want to. Sure, if it doesn't give me a ton of player power, it becomes an end of the season thing that I do for a bit of fun. And next up, the upgrade system. So there's some big changes here happening to the gear upgrades. The basic overview of what's happening is that they are removing Valor altogether. So currently, if you log into the game, you pay some Valor and you can upgrade your pieces up to 415 eye level, which is obviously below Mythic Raid, or just below sort of high-end Mythic. Now what is happening is you're actually going to get tokens from every content. The way I kind of envisioned it is it's like Primal Infusions but for regular gear, but it actually lets you go one tier up. So if you have an LFR piece, you can take it to normal. If you have a normal piece, you can take it to heroic. If you have a heroic piece, you can take it to mythic. And it actually works across all the game's content. So it works across Raid, it works across Mythic Plus, and it works across world content as well. It doesn't impact PvP at all. As I said, all content, and I had to clarify, it doesn't affect PvP in any way. Their gearing system is staying exactly the same. But for PvE content, you'll get these tokens that will drop in the world, and the tokens will be based on the content you're doing. So you might get a normal content token, or a heroic content token, or a mythic content token, and that will let you take a piece one tier higher than what it is at the moment. So if you get a mythic tier token or a mythic level token, you can take a heroic piece up to mythic. If you get a normal, that'll let you take an LFR up to normal. But you'll actually get these tokens from doing the content below. So if you're doing heroic raid, you'll get tokens that will let you take it up to mythic gear, which I think is quite cool, or at least that's how I understand the system. They do have, they're called flight stones, and the goal is really to give you a unified currency system to really simplify that upgrade path. They've also said that it is gated to begin with, but not in a meaningful way. They believe that the way it's gated isn't going to impact people. It's not going to be like the Valor system where you want to just never spend any Valor in case you upgrade the wrong thing. This is meant to be, nope, spend it as you get it. You'll get enough of it that you can kind of spend it however you want. Yeah. So I think that's what we have so far. We will have the PTR this week. Let's just have a quick look. Is the PTR up yet? It is public test room. Let's give that a quick install, and we'll have a bit of a play around with that a little later on. Hey, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.